In the continuation of our study about different tabs of PowerPoint, we are going to study the most practical and interesting tab, transition. The effects and settings that exist in transition parts help us to add effect between two slides. When you are changing the slides and this effect and related settings are in transition section, when you give a transition to your slide and it is activated, you can see your work from preview part to see how is the effect like. Now this option is inactive because in transition part we select none, but when you open the transition menu, you can see the ready-made and different effects made by PowerPoint and choose the one you like. That the transition between the slides happens by the effect that you have selected. Now you can see the slide number 2 that I gave transition. Because it has transition, the preview option will be active. When I click on it, I can see the transition that I selected. Next to a slide, you can see a shown star. Each slide that have transition will have a star next to it, which shows that the slide has transition. For example, the first slide's transition is none, so there is no star next to it. There are different transitions here, but the famous one which was added to 29 version of PowerPoint is Morph, which I will talk about it completely. But now I want to talk about different transitions. There are different effects here, but we shouldn't overuse the transition. We shouldn't disturb the attention of the audience to the transitions and not pay attention to the content. I use transition more in making motion graphic with PowerPoint. But if I want to use transition in my presentation slides, I don't use this kind of transition, which even I don't use it in motion graphic. In my idea, they are not interesting to the audience. These transitions, which are full of effects, disturb the attention of the audience from your main content. So, pay attention to the transition that you are using. It should be aligned with the content. And don't overuse the transition. Each transition that is selected here has an effect option based on the transition that you selected. You can see the different modes of each in effect option. For example, I selected this effect in the effect option. I can choose that this transition be from left or right or vice versa. In this way, you can create more variety for one transition. The effect option varies from effect to effect. For example, this effect has vertical and horizontal mode. You can give different options to it and use it. In this way, for instance, in the rotation of this square based on the different direction of the rotation. From right, from bottom, from left, from top. Effect option changes to form mode. You can change the option of the one you like to use in the effect option. In the timing section, you can manage the time of this transition, the transition that I selected, and do the settings here. I click on Apply to All. This effect will be added to all the slides. As you see, all the slides have a sign of a star that if I want play of them are played by transition with the same transition I set for the first slide. When you click on Apply to All, this change will happen. Now, I press Ctrl Z to reset the setting, and in the sound section, you can choose that where the transition happens with the sound or not. By default, it is on no sound, but you can see the sound that PowerPoint gives you, or click on other sounds to add a saved sound from your computer to the slide. I don't usually recommend you to add sound, especially in presentation slides, but if we want to make motion graphic with PowerPoint, that for motion graphic we used background music. It's based on the plan that you have, and you have the option to be used. If the loop until next sound is active, the sound will be played on one slide until the next sound to the other slide. It actually enters the loop, and by duration you can regulate the time of your transition. Very fast, like 0.75 seconds, or too slow, like 9 seconds. It can be done in the duration. The transition from one slide to the next was very slow, and it totally depends on your setting in the duration section. And in advanced slide part that you can regulate the setting of movement to either slide happens by a mouse click or set time for this action. If I want to make slide for presentation, I don't select after option and let the mouse click option be enabled. But if I went to motion graphic with the video output, one of the most important options is that we shouldn't select mouse click, and we should activate the after section, and based on the content that exists in the slide, I give time for that. I regulate here that the transition happens after 5 seconds. You can change the option with seconds. The first option from right side is hundredths of a second. These zeros in the middle shows second, and two left zeros shows minutes, and second is usually used.